The curse has not ended. Darkness spreads further, haunting those who dare to touch the sealed secret. In the part 2, the veil of the past will be lifted, strange deaths will unfold, and the terrifying truth behind the red cloth will be revealed. Prepare yourself, for what awaits is far more horrifying than any fear you've ever known. Tan Kam always hated city mornings. She was used to living at night, working on drafts for a periodical magazine. The job had never paid much, but after years of grinding at an advertising company, she no longer had the desire to compete. Her savings were enough to live steadily, and as long as she didn't plan on supporting anyone else, she would never have to worry about running out of money. After quitting her job, she began writing novels, not for royalties or fame, but simply to breathe. Since childhood, she had lived like a wound-up clock, always tense. Now, at last, she could loosen the springs, if only for a while. That morning, when she woke up, her phone was vibrating endlessly with missed calls. She called back Duong TT, and laughter burst through the speaker. Lucan Kai and Lam Kai were with her. TT's voice rose above the noise, brimming with excitement. "The clothes are finished. Come see them now." So fast? Not even half a day had passed and they were already done? With money, everything moved quickly. Tan Kam hurried out of her house. Her beloved cat, Hak Bao, was dozing in its basket. She dared not bring it along, afraid it might run away again. When she arrived at TT's home, she rushed inside. A strange, invisible force seemed to be pulling her forward, compelling her to pour all her attention into the garments. Her heart pounded as though she were going on a first date. In the dressing room, a scarlet qipao hung in the center, flanked by a matching halter aoyem, scarf, and head wrap. The group buzzed with excitement. TT called out gleefully, "Tan Kam, have you ever seen clothes this beautiful?" Lucan Kai urged impatiently, "Hurry and put them on so we can admire you." But Tan Kam felt uneasy. Everything seemed too smooth, almost unbelievable. She picked up the scarf. Since the fabric hadn't been enough, she and Lucan Kai had used scraps to design the head wrap and scarf, while the halter yem had been Lam Kai's idea. Nothing went to waste. Each girl took her piece proudly. When Tan Kam held the scarf, an odd shiver passed through her, an uncanny sense of holding soft hands. The silky fabric made her long to press it against her cheek. TT was the first to emerge. Under the light, the form-fitting qipao made her look both elegant and dazzling. Lam Kai followed, the red halter yem accentuating her classical allure. Together, they seemed to illuminate the room with the beauty of old China, sensual yet refined, never gaudy. "Tan Kam, tie the scarf for me," Lam Kai said. Under its glow, her face seemed to come alive. Tan Kam hesitated. Scarves were meant for cold weather, not the heat of summer. And yet, the moment she held it, she felt an almost irresistible urge to put it on herself. TT was the first to emerge. Under the light, the form-fitting qipao made her look both elegant and dazzling. Lam Kai followed, the red halter top accentuating her classical allure. Together, they seemed to illuminate the room with the beauty of old China, sensual yet refined, never gaudy. "Tan Kam, tie the scarf for me," Lam Kai said. Under its glow, her face seemed to come alive. Tan Kam hesitated. Scarves were meant for cold weather, not the heat of summer. And yet, the moment she held it, she felt an almost irresistible urge to put it on herself. Just then, she heard a faint meow. Startled, she shoved past her friends and ran out to look for Hak Bao. But the cat was nowhere to be found. "Didn't you hear that cat?" she asked. "No," TT laughed. "Maybe you've gone mad from missing Hak Bao." They teased her mercilessly, and Tan Kam grew more upset, especially remembering the exorcist who had once mistaken her for a rag picker. Her friends' laughter only grew louder. Later that night, all four of them, dressed to perfection, arrived at Jimmy Bar. The crowd turned to watch them as if celebrities had just stepped down from a limousine. Among them, Lam Kai drew particular attention from a wealthy diamond tycoon, notorious for his womanizing. She smiled knowingly ready for the chase. The bar was connected to a 5-star hotel, and soon Lam Kai and the man disappeared into the presidential suite. Desire consumed them, bodies entangled again and again in a feverish storm. When it was over, the man collapsed beside her, panting. Never before have I felt such ecstasy. Being with you is like merging with two completely different women. You're extraordinary. Lam Kai smiled faintly. Clearly, the young master had taken the bait. She had no real interest in running an advertising company. Her greatest ambition was to marry into wealth. Watching TT's luxurious life, how could she not crave the same? She touched the red halter top clinging to her skin. A beautiful woman, she thought, was no different from possessing a kind of sorcery. Feeling delighted, she downed her glass of wine and slipped into the bathroom. But as cold water poured over her, a horrifying vision appeared in the fogged mirror. A figure, drenched in crimson, materialized. Its arms wrapped around her neck, its legs coiled around her waist. Blood-matted hair hung down, and from its empty sockets oozed thick black blood. It had no eyes. Panic seized her. She tried to scream, but the grip around her throat tightened. And in that instant, she understood. The woman in the mirror was none other than the red halter top she was wearing. That was Lam Kai's final thought before the eyeless face, dripping blood, twisted into a grotesque smile. The water still rushed in the bathroom as the young tycoon, impatient from waiting, finally pushed the door open. Lam Kai stood hunched over the sink, hair dripping wet across her face, her lower body bare. He embraced her from behind, whispering lustfully, "Baby, what are you doing?" Sliding his hand downward, he touched something round and slick. Curious, he drew back and froze. It was an eyeball. In Lam Kai's hand, another eye was being rinsed under the stream, her fingers caressing it as if it were a precious jewel. Both pupils glared at him, brimming with hatred. Frozen in terror, he watched as Lam Kai slowly turned. Blood gushed from her empty sockets, spilling onto the halter top. Her face was eerily calm. Raising a hand toward his mouth, she murmured softly, "Washing eyes." The eyeball slipped from her palm, rolling toward him. Before he could react, Lam Kai snapped a toothbrush in half and drove it straight into his eye. Blood sprayed as he collapsed. She straddled him, methodically gouging out his eyes, chanting with a grotesque rhythm, "Dig, dig, dig." His vision faded into darkness. The last thing he saw was the bloody woman clinging to Lam Kai, her hair snaking around them both, her eyeless face curled into a chilling smile. Tan Kam stood in the middle of the bar, her eyes scanning the crowd, but Lam Kai was nowhere to be seen. She tugged at Duong TT's arm and asked, "Where's Lam Kai?" But TT was surrounded by a circle of men. The pounding music drowned out Tan Kam's voice. TT didn't hear a thing. She only laughed and flirted, caught up in a strange, intoxicating frenzy. Tan Kam frowned. Ever since putting on those cursed red clothes, they all seemed like different people. The change sent a shiver through her, unease spreading deep inside. She couldn't stand still any longer. She had to find Lam Kai. Guessing Lam Kai might be on the rooftop getting some air, she hurried toward the elevator. Inside, a long-haired woman crouched on the floor, clutching her stomach and trembling as if in terrible pain. Her face was hidden by her hair, showing only unnaturally pale skin. Tan Kam hesitated, wanting to ask if the woman needed help. But the air in the elevator was strangely stifling, making her uneasy. "It's probably just menstrual cramps," she told herself. "I felt the same before." With a soft sigh, she pressed the button for the rooftop. The elevator jolted violently, then began to ascend slowly. A chill spread through the cabin, crawling down Tan Kam's spine. When it stopped, the woman stood and walked out, her long hair cascading down her back, still hiding her face. Tan Kam held the door for her. Just as the doors began to close, the woman lowered her head and whispered, "Thank you. Welcome to the 13th floor." Her voice was so faint that Tan Kam wasn't sure she had heard correctly. Instinctively, she forced a smile, though inside she shuddered. Glancing outside, She thought she saw several figures waiting by the elevator. Their expressions were blank, their eyes lifeless. Goosebumps prickled her skin. A strange sense of familiarity flickered through her mind, though she couldn't recall where she had seen the woman before. When she finally reached the rooftop, the night wind was icy cold. The vast space stretched empty, no one was there. Annoyed, she muttered under her breath, "Damn girl, where the hell did you go?" Then she glanced back at the elevator panel, and her breath caught. There was no number 13. She turned to a nearby hotel staff member and asked, "Why doesn't this elevator have a 13th floor?" The staff froze, staring at her suspiciously. "Why would you ask about that floor? I just saw a woman get off on the 13th floor. If the elevator doesn't go there, how could she have gotten out?" The staff member's face drained of color, as if she had just spoken blasphemy. "Miss, the 13th floor was sealed years ago. It used to be offices, but within a single month several people jumped to their deaths. The owners panicked and shut it down permanently, even removing the number from the panel." Tan Cam's voice trembled. "But I saw her with my own eyes. And there were others waiting by the elevator too." The staff replied coldly, "Then perhaps you saw a ghost. You'd better see a psychiatrist." The words echoed in Tan Cam's head, leaving her dizzy. What she saw had been real, so why was she being treated like a lunatic? When she stepped out of the elevator again, chaos filled the air. People whispered frantically, "They say someone died in the hotel." A dreadful premonition surged through her. She quickly called TT and Ankai. At that very moment, Luke Tumin had already arrived at the scene. It was a serious case. The victim was none other than the president of a powerful diamond corporation. But what stunned him most was the panicked tone of his superior's phone call, as if this case was unlike anything an experienced officer had ever faced. Inside the hotel room, everything was disturbingly neat. No blood, no signs of struggle. The air was warm, almost too ordinary. Nothing like a murder scene. Yet his instincts screamed. Something horrifying was hidden here. In the bathroom, bright lights reflected off sterile tiles. A faint metallic tang lingered in the air. Two corpses lay sprawled on the floor, a man and a woman. Their eye sockets were hollow, gouged clean. The murder weapon lay discarded nearby, a blood-stained toothbrush. Most grotesque of all were the 4 eyeballs floating in the hotel's water pitcher, gleaming as though freshly washed under running water. Even the hardened medical examiner shuddered. Unbelievable. The eyes still seem alive, rolling as if they're watching us. No one dares look too long. Luke Tumin tightened his gloves, inhaled sharply, and examined the woman's body. Her corpse was propped against the mirror, stiff, locked in a twisted pose. When he pulled her down, the entire room gasped. Carved neatly into her chest was a patch of skin, shaped precisely like a red halter top. It wasn't cloth, it was her own flesh. The forensic doctor concluded grimly. She gouged out her own eyes, then his, and finally carved her skin. Both bled to death. But with pain this excruciating, I can't fathom how she managed it. There were no signs of intruders, no security footage of anyone entering or leaving. All the evidence seemed to point to one conclusion: a double suicide. At that moment, a girl burst into the room, nearly collapsing. Luke Tumin caught her, staring into her tear-filled eyes. "Someone died here, didn't they?" she whispered. "Was the victim Lam Kai?" Behind her, 2 other voices cried out. "Tan Cam, why'd you run ahead without us? Ask him quick. Is it Lam Kai?" 3 young women, stylishly dressed, rushed in together. One of them wore a blazing red qipao, so radiant it seemed to light up the entire room. Tan Cam clenched her fists, staring straight into the officer's eyes. "Please tell us, what happened to Lam Kai?" Luke Tumin hesitated, but at last he spoke the truth. "She's dead." The words fell like a blade. The girl in the red scarf collapsed in a faint. Her 2 friends screamed, rushing to her side. "Anki, wake up!" The scene descended into chaos. Outside, police sirens wailed in the distance. With no choice, Luke Tumin lifted the unconscious girl into his arms and rushed toward the hospital, as Tan Cam and TT hurried after him. When Luke On Kai opened her eyes, all she saw was a clean, sterile white ceiling, faintly scented with disinfectant. Someone was holding her hand. She turned and realized it was Tan Cam. TT stood by the hospital window, gazing out in sorrow. The moment On Kai stirred, Tan Cam rushed to her side. On Kai, you're awake. Do you want some water? It's true. Lam Kai is really dead, On Kai whispered. Tears welled in Tan Cam's eyes. Duong TT hugged On Kai tightly, trying to comfort her. Don't think about it too much. It was just an accident. Who killed Lam Kai? No one. She took her own life, Tan Cam replied. How could Lam Kai commit suicide? She looked perfectly fine when we went to the bar. How could she suddenly kill herself like that? Just then, a warm male voice interrupted. Exactly. Now that you're awake, may I ask you a few questions? On Kai looked up. It was the police officer who had broken the news of Lam Kai's death. He introduced himself. I'm Luke Tu Min, Deputy Leader of the Major Crimes Unit. I hope you'll cooperate with us in this investigation. On Kai gave a faint nod. After finishing his notes, Tu Min left the hospital. A girl ran after him. He turned and saw it was Tan Cam, the same wide-eyed young woman who had bumped into him at the hotel. Today she wore a pale pink dress, her long hair flowing loosely. Tear marks still streaked her cheeks. I want to see Lam Kai one last time. Can you arrange that for me? She pleaded. Tu Min met her gaze. He had been pursued by countless women. He was nearly 30, but there was something strangely compelling about this girl. After a moment, he nodded. The air outside was bitterly cold. Overcome with grief at her friend's death, Tan Cam hung her head in silence. Wanting to ease the heavy atmosphere, Tu Min began telling her a joke as the elevator descended. Once, a doctor and a nurse were riding the hospital elevator after their night shift. Halfway down, someone tried to get in, but the doctor quickly shut the doors. The nurse asked why. The doctor said, "Didn't you see? That person had a red string tied around their wrist. Every corpse in the morgue here has one of those." Hearing that, the nurse raised her hand and said, "You mean like this one?" Tan Cam listened quietly. Then, all of a sudden, she raised her own hand. Like this one. On her pale wrist was a bright red string. Startled, Tu Min stepped back in fright. But Tan Cam chuckled softly. "I've worn this since I was little. It's supposed to ward off evil spirits." He had meant to scare her, but instead, she had frightened him. Yet he was oddly delighted for the first time he saw her smile. But her smile vanished the instant she saw Lam Kai's body. Though Tan Cam was a brave woman, her knees buckled when she faced the corpse. She collapsed into Tu Min's arms. When her eyes fell on Lam Kai's chest, she pointed to the missing patch of flesh and screamed. The halter top, the red halter top. Yes, it was shaped exactly like a halter top. The real garment Lam Kai had been wearing had been stripped off and placed at the bottom of the jar of eyeballs. That jar still sat in the autopsy room. Blood-red fibers floated in the water like strands of a woman's hair. The 4 eyeballs bobbed, sometimes colliding, sometimes seeming to grin at each other. Could Lam Kai really have done something so cruel? Tan Cam shuddered. She remembered how Lam Kai had once been. Cheerful, lively, calling herself the queen of fashion. How could she now be reduced to this soulless, cold corpse? Was she insane? The forensic doctor replied grimly. From our analysis, before the incident she was taking a bath. Then, in a sudden fit of madness, she did all this, and both victims bled to death. But with such agony, I can't fathom how she managed it. Tan Cam protested. I've known her for years. I never once heard of her having mental problems. She showed no sign of it at all. That's exactly what troubles us, Tu Min said. There's no medical history of mental illness and no family history either. She and the jewelry store owner had no feud. In fact, witnesses say they entered the hotel looking affectionate. We have no clear lead on this case. Tan Cam frowned in thought, then asked, but why would she cut off her own skin? That's what we're hoping you girls can help us understand. Why would she carve her flesh into the shape of a halter top? It seems she was obsessed with it. Of course, Tan-Kam said. Didn't you notice we all loved that piece of fabric? She reached into her bag and pulled out a bright red scarf, showing it to Tu-min. The moment he held it, he felt entranced. The crimson hue had a bewitching allure that was almost impossible to look away from. Lam Kai TT, even on Kai, we all own something made from that fabric. Who could have guessed that the moment she wore her red halter top, this tragedy would strike? It breaks our hearts. Tears slipped down her cheeks and fell onto the scarf. As they did, a strange light seemed to glimmer across its threads, leaving her dazed. She gently wrapped the scarf around her neck, remembering how Lam Kai had playfully tied it for her before they went to the bar. How happy they all had been then. If only those moments could return. But before she could finish adjusting the scarf, she heard Duong TT calling from upstairs. Tan-Kam, hurry, come to on Kai. She's starting to babble nonsense. Tan-Kam quickly said to Tu-min, please go with her. I want to stay here with Lam Kai for a while. He nodded, then grabbed TT's hand and rushed upstairs to the patient rooms. The real reason Tan-Kam wanted to stay behind was that she had just realized something horrifying. Lam Kai's corpse in the morgue looked exactly like the woman she had seen on the 13th floor earlier. Especially from the side, it was unmistakable. No wonder she had found her familiar. But Lam Kai had already been dead by then. How could she appear in the elevator, much less step out onto a floor that supposedly didn't exist? Summoning all her courage, Tan-Kam entered the morgue. Slowly, she pulled back the sheet covering Lam Kai's face. 2 gaping black holes stared back at her. Her heart pounded wildly, but she forced herself to look closer, to see if Lam Kai really was the woman from the elevator. Then, Lam Kai's lips twisted into a grotesque grin. Terrified, Tan-Kam staggered backward. Too late. Lam Kai's corpse had seized her wrist. Her touch was rigid, icy cold. Lam Kai sat up, pressed her dead hand over Tan-Kam's mouth, and whispered, welcome to the 13th floor. A nauseating stench spilled from her lips, making Tan-Kam gag. She tried to scream, retreating only to bump into someone. Arms wrapped around her, and a gentle voice soothed. It's all right. Nothing's wrong. Don't be afraid. It was Tu-min. He looked at her, silently asking what had just terrified her so badly. But Tan-Kam couldn't explain. She simply pulled him upstairs to see on Kai. There, they found her huddled beneath the blanket, trembling violently, refusing to come out. Tan-Kam carefully pulled the blanket down and spoke softly. On Kai, it's me, Tan-Kam. Don't be afraid. What's wrong? On Kai poked her head out, saw Tan-Kam, and burst into sobs, clutching her tightly. I saw Lam Kentucky. It was really her. Tan-Kam held her close, murmuring comfort. Don't be scared. Maybe you were just seeing things. T sighed. She's never experienced a shock like this. It's too much for her to bear. On Kai collapsed into Tan-Kam's arms, crying. It was Lam Kentucky. She was sitting in a pool of blood in the bathroom. Her halter top was drenched in blood. She had no eyes. I saw her. It was her. TT rushed forward in panic. Oh God. Snap out of it. Don't talk nonsense. If something happens to you, what will I do? Tan-Kam stroked on Kai's back, soothing her. Don't dwell on it. It must have been an illusion, not real. Don't torment yourself anymore. After receiving a sedative injection, On Kai frowned slightly, then sank into a restless sleep. The curse of the red cloth has not yet ended. Darker secrets still await ahead. If you want to uncover what hides behind the night and the whispers from the other side, stay tuned for the next part of the red cloth. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss any of the chilling stories to come. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.